Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Today, we are joined by the great Baker from Above Average FPL. Welcome, Baker. It's an honor to have you. But first, Pras, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm taking my summer break. So I'm in India actually visiting my family, but doing very well. A little bit jet lagged because I only got here a couple of days ago. But enough about me. I think let's go to Baker. It's lovely to have you. It's the first time we've had you on Burning Questions, but it feels like we know each other well. We've had a few Zoom chats or watch alongs, as well as you've been in our ears every Sunday night, or if not a Monday morning. So pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here, boys. Yeah. It feels like I've been here before, and that me and Andy chatted loads on Spaces start last season, and Pras we've met at Fest and chatted many times, and Zooms and all the rest of it. So yeah, very very pleased to be here on a and nice on a daytime pod. So yeah.
Yeah, just for those that may not know of the great Baker, alongside his partner Adam on Above Average FPL, they do an excellent pod on, I believe, Sundays or Mondays?
Sunday nights.
Sundays, okay.
Sunday nights, yeah.
And yeah, we go way back, Baker, because when I first started spacing, we were, spacing a lot, and I leaned on you a lot for advice on and this and that. So it's really cool to come full circle and be podding with you today, and getting your insights.
Good stuff, boys.
Okay, so for today's agenda, guys, we have sort of just a game week one review. What did we learn from the first game week? Take it lightly. It's just one game, and people are already posting ranks and thinking about what moves to make, -8s according to Pras. So you do not want to be doing that. It's a long ways to go, 37 game weeks to go. So we'll sort of review the fixtures and kind of see what we saw, or talk about what we saw, and then maybe we have some burning questions for game week 2, which we'll sort of implement as we talk about the game week 1, and then finally some bus team ideas for moving forward. I think game week 3 is going to be a much more interesting game week in terms of transfers and possibly hits. So without further ado, is there anything else you would like to add, Pras?
No, I just wanted to emphasize that usually Burning Questions looks forward, and we look at a lot of data. That's the theme of what we do. But in the early seasons, it's all about what we are seeing and how does that impact the future. So that's the theme here. We're going to talk about backward looking, which is game week 1, but then talk about each team and what do we know that is different from when we started out making our teams. And some of that will be grossly exaggerated because we're basing it on one game, but some of that may be some clues for what we should look out for in game week 2, and then kind of build upon that for our transfers coming up.
Also, just before we move on, I do have a new backdrop. I'm reading the comments here, and you too, Pras, as well as Baker. But this is a jersey signed from Key. Do you remember Key from Swansea and
Yeah.
Newcastle? So he's one of my favorite Korean players of all time, and I had the honor of meeting him, and he signed this jersey for him. So forever I will keep it. So yeah, just in case you're wondering. Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and obviously Sun didn't want to give you a signed jersey given that you ditched him game week 1, right?
Yeah, I can't. Maybe I have the one day. I hope I hope I can meet him, but we'll see. Has to get lucky, I guess. But okay, cool. So we have fixtures, kind of the list of the games that happened in game week 1. I guess we'll kind of go through it, and then as we go through it, we'll have because Pras put up a tweet about FPL, and then a bunch of community members sort of commented, and thank you so much for the question. So we'll sort of, there's some overarching questions or overlapping questions, as well as some unique questions, structural questions, player, team types of questions. So a lot to cover here, but we begin with Crystal Palace versus Arsenal, and we have a touch map. And Pras, if you can explain what this touch map is about.
So, look, I mean, firstly, just a quick plug on the members area in FF Scout. So what you can do is you have a match day tab. So at the end of the game week or even at the end of the matches, you can go to the members area. There's a tab called matches. And then for each game, you will have this sort of touch map. And Baker will tell you why touch maps can be dangerous in a second. But more importantly, what it tells you is it gives you a feel for the game, where the average positions were, what were the key stats for that particular game. Again, with a pinch of salt, because sometimes you can have game state as a context for XG, but it gives you all of that. It gives you team stats. So that's what we've done here for Arsenal. And what are we looking for? We were looking for essentially 2 or 3 things. Number one, how does that attack look? So one of the things that we noticed was Martinelli was actually quite upfront. And it was, in fact, when Jesus was pressing and he was dropping back a bit, it was Martinelli that was filling that gap. So what that means for us FPL managers that own Martinelli is look forward to those runs, look forward to him being involved in the goals. And Saka was doing a lot more work. However, that was also Zaha's side. And so that may be a one-off game event, or it could be something that we have to look out for the future. The other thing that was important to note from that game was Zinchenko's positioning. So Zinchenko was playing left back. We don't know what happens once Tierney comes back. Does he move to the midfield position instead of Xhaka, and possibly? But here you can see that he was pretty well advanced. I mean, he's number 35 in the touch map. So therefore, he was the one kind of supporting the left wing once Martinelli was filling in the position up front. So very dynamic start. We knew that Arsenal is looking good, but I would also caution that Crystal Palace attacked, and Ramsdale only made 2 saves, but both of them could have been goals for Palace. So it wasn't that this was a 4-0 kind of win that we saw against Chelsea. I mean, this was a Arsenal team that played well, but they were sort of hanging on, at least on the other side of the pitch. But Baker, what did you make of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, start with the first game week is we have pre-season, which is like what I call like version 1.0 of your information, and then you have the last friendly and the Community Shield, which is like, that's my version 1.1. That's what we're kind of basing it on, and then this is kind of live, your version 1.2 of this one. So if I go back to that Sevilla game when they won 6-0, Zinchenko played the tuck-in role. So he played the inverted fullback, sort of the Cancelo, almost drops into a centre midfielder role. And you saw Xhaka make lots of driving runs. That was completely different in this game. So it suddenly become more of I think almost a 3-5-2, it felt like in that first half, certainly that first half an hour, where White came across to make it a 3 at the back. Zinchenko then was so high. It was as high as Saka. You've got a 5 million defender doing the same job as the 8 million midfielder there. And what you then have is a £6 million midfielder up front. Now, if that position stays that way another week, Zinchenko's a golden asset. That's suddenly he's up there with the top wing back, fullback options that you could be.
Yeah.
But he might go back to that Sevilla game and play that inside role. And that's why I think it's still that bit of, well, let's see it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. You have to sort of pick up a pattern and see if that's repeated, and then you take information. And then there's new information, right? I think given how well Saliba has done in defense, who's a good 4.5 asset, who looks more nailed. Gabriel, we already knew, is great at 5.0. I think given this setup, White will keep the place. We're crystal balling, but I think White will stay at right back because of how well Saliba has played. So Tomiyasu is less of a threat. But what do we think when Tierney comes back? I mean, he's a beast as well on the left. So does he share minutes with Zinchenko, or it's sort of now Zinchenko stays and stays left back, and that's his position to keep?
I think, though, we should also remember that Zinchenko got taken off.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't substituted. He was taken off because they were on him. He was the place to exploit, and they were fully the team on top for 30 minutes that second half.
Yeah.
And that was the place they were pressing. And he just couldn't do anything about it, Zinchenko. So from a fantasy asset, we say fantastic. He looks great. But from a football perspective, Palace targeted Zinchenko in that second half. That was the place they tried to exploit. And that's why Tierney came on, because he's a better defender.
Yeah. Go
Andy,
ahead. Keep going.
And therefore, you might say, maybe that is a reason that you bring him in to that left midfield and you put Tierney up there. And then we'll see some more information of how it goes. But Zinchenko is definitely the very, very exciting one, because if we have a route in that's better than Ramsdale, it could be. That's a brilliant option. Saliba's one that's, again, it's a lesson for us as FPL people, because I saw lots of people talking about White because we think of it as an asset, but Arsenal fans had been saying all pre-season that they were going to line up with Gabriel and Saliba. And I think everyone was like, no, they won't bin White off. But he looks like he should be there.
Yeah.
He was good.
I was just going to kind of summarize what you said, Baker, because you literally exactly pointed out what Zinchenko is about. Pep, Arteta learned under Pep, assistant coach, and he brings the exact same tactics, right? Inverted forwards. Xhaka makes those driving runs, as you said, and his, Zinchenko's job is to cover that space when Xhaka moves up. So when I looked at his touch map and saw, Zinchenko's position at 35, it's very interesting, because normally I would think Xhaka is going to be a little bit more forward. And you're right, he is he used to be that, center attacking midfielder that, moved to that fullback role. And as you mentioned, he's got all the tools to be a great asset to Arsenal, but his defensive prowess is certainly his weak point. So I like the fact that you said he's been taken off, not substituted off. So it is one to watch. But from this game, I thought he was very involved. I thought he was, excellent to own, and very exciting to own as well. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, so on Arsenal, there's some. Let's now come back to FPL. So FPL wise, I think the biggest issue with Arsenal is balancing which three players you want. I don't think it's a question whether you want three, because there's so many cheap options. So if we think that a lot of people have Martinelli, or if you don't have Martinelli, that's the standout price point. So that's something you should look for. If you don't have a Jesus or a Saka, that's one. Then we're talking about the third one. And so my issue is Zinchenko may look great, but he's competing with a Saliba who's also looking nailed. And 4.5 is a price bracket, which we thought was crowded, but it's really not, because, you're competing with the Leicester guys, you're competing with the Brighton defenders, you're competing with the Man United defenders. I think Saliba is better than them in terms of 4.5. So I'm not comparing 4.5 with the 5. And then you get to the 5 million bracket. Gabriel and Zinchenko are competing with Trippier, Walker, Cucurella eventually. So that's a very difficult price bracket. So come back to FPL now, and let's talk about the defenders. If you are starting today, Gameweek 2 wildcard, who is the defender you go for? Or there's another option. You keep the slot empty for potentially getting Saka after Gameweek 2. So I'll come to Andy, you first.
Sorry, Pras, could you repeat the question?
So who would you go for as your third Arsenal? If you were wildcarding today, and let's assume you either have Jesus or Saka, you have Martinelli, who's the third guy you go for, thinking about not between themselves, but the competition they have at their price points?
Yeah, fair. I think I would go to Ramsdale still, because I like him as the best keeper option, because I want one defensive asset in the arsenal. I think the good thing I made in the first game week 1 team is to sort of spread out the assets in terms of my defensive options, because I do have 5 in the back plus a keeper, which means 6 guys from 6 different teams, and sort of you play it out initially and see which defense is formulating doing better and better, and then use that data to maybe double up, triple up. Again, I do have 2 City defensive assets, which was somewhat of a guarantee that they're going to do well, right? As you mentioned, there's a bunch of wing backs that I want. Now there's a question mark when it comes to Spurs wing back, so maybe that's one minus there. But Trippier is looking like a decent option, and so I would go Ramsdale. If there's a defender I would go for, I don't think I would go for Zinchenko or Tierney for now. I think I'd rather try to save a little bit of money and go for maybe a Saliba or a White and save 0.5 there.
Baker?
Yeah, I mean, it's early. Tomiyasu just started training again this week, and we still do need to see what that impact that is with White, and do we start to see some rotation when they get to the Europa? You might see that White and Saliba, basically one of them plays in those games. So I'm not 100% sure, but it did make me think straight away, would I rather have, say, Ramsdale and Walker or Edison and Saliba? And it's quite boring, but I don't mind though. Edison and Saliba, they're going to play. I know Ramsdale will play, but you're not worrying about the team sheet like you would be with Walker. I think Ake's playing really well for City, and I think I can just see at some point Walker's going to miss out. And if the good 4.5 comes up out of this that you can play really regularly, and we've also got Pereira in midfield, having Edison as a set and forget could be just such an easy way to just avenue to get those gains in City, because you don't gain with just Cancelo, do you?
Yeah,
you never do. So it could be a way in that we can afford Edison comfortably.
Yeah, we can come to City when we get there. I actually do have some thinking about Edison versus Diaz versus Walker, but I think on Arsenal we all agree. I think if Saliba is to nail down his place, if we're looking to get there, I like him the most at the moment.
Yeah.
Whether it is him or White, you take that call. But I think if Arsenal fans are saying that the match, what we're seeing in Game Week 1 is telling us that Saliba is the guy, I think that 4.5, because the one theme coming out of Game Week 1 is, we will need some funds in attack. We will need some funds in our forward line. So think about players, and that 0.5 could be important. So it's not just Edison or him, it could be anyone, but getting 1.5 million out of the bank for a 4.5 defender from an Arsenal team that's looking good should be great.
Just would say on Ramsdale just is that he only made 2 saves, and he was so close to the bonus.
Yeah.
One more save would have been an extra 2 points for him, and suddenly he would have been the top scoring goalkeeper of the weekend. He had 2 brilliant saves, but one more just easy save, and he was the top goal scorer.
But
point scorer of the weekend.
At the same time, there was a little bit of suspect moments here and there. Him trying to clear the ball out, and he could have got scored on easily as well. So as a Ramsdale owner, I think we got away with a clean sheet there. But
it's a tough game. I mean, let's remember, this was the toughest game, I think, that Arsenal had in their first 8 game weeks. I mean, Man United is there as well, but okay, let's not go there. But Palace away was a tough game. So if they've come out of there with a clean sheet, a goal for Martinelli, that's win. That's a big win.
Yeah. Palace always a tough game away. Also, last thing, any additional thoughts on Jesus?
Looked very sharp. He looked exactly how you'd want your striker to look. He was attacking. People will look at the blank, but he could have, been involved a lot more in other games. And in Leicester, I'm pretty sure he will be involved. So nothing to panic. He was pretty good.
Yeah, you can't do anything about that right now.
Okay.
You just see how it plays out. But Leicester's the fun game.
All right, I think nothing on Palace, right? I mean, bad fixtures next 2-3 weeks. If anything changes there, we can change our opinion. But again, we're keeping it focused on what does it mean for the next few game weeks, and no new information on Palace as such that we took. Next one, Andy.
Next one is Fulham and Liverpool. I guess a lot to talk about here. There's a couple questions in the tweet about what to do with Pereira, especially like whether you should start him over the guys like Neto and Bailey as well as the big team in Liverpool. I think we have a lot to talk about in terms of Nunes, and a lot of the questions are based on like, do I wildcard and restructure my team to get Nunes in? Like, way too soon in my opinion, but we will get into it. First, we have a chart about Nunes. If you want to explain this, Pras.
It's just getting more into basically the match day. So this is another table that you can access during the match day to see, how things are going. Look, the point is the guy got 44 minutes. So firstly, he may not even have come on if Thiago wouldn't have been injured, right? I feel, because Klopp thought that I need to make a change, but maybe he wouldn't have made the change if Thiago wasn't coming on, because, you only have 3 windows to make 5 substitutions. So I felt like he could have made that change and not got Nunes in. But he thought, might as well do it because that's a change I was thinking of making maybe on the 60th minute. So there's a little bit of fortune. However, the big thing is the guy just completely overtook the attack. He was the focal point. We've never seen something like that. I mean, even Jota bows to the great Salah and says, okay, I'm going to try to feed you as much as possible. This guy was hanging around the box. He hogged the total chances created, the XG created by the team. And his positioning was completely different to Firmino. Yeah. So Firmino is the guy who's, if you look at the heat map, we've not shown the touch map here, but if you look at that, his positioning compared to Firmino is very different. And the eye test said it. So there's no big, we're not saying something that people haven't noticed. What we need to watch out for is, what does this mean for Diaz? More importantly, what does it mean for Salah? What does it mean for the Liverpool attack? Because the backdrop of this was, it was a very poor performance from Liverpool. I mean, they were very poor in the first half. The second half was slightly better, but you expect that. They're the second best team in the league and they're chasing a game. But both from a defensive point of view, I think they were poor. I wasn't, I was a Robertson and Trent owner. That was not a great watch. And, we can give credit to Fulham in a second, but if we're sticking to Liverpool, I think that was a game where even Klopp said that they need a kick up the right side. I think you'll see a better performance. But this was a game where Liverpool were not as good as you'd expect. Nunes came and made an impact, and you still got a haul from Salah. So that was my summary.
Yep. Baker?
Yeah, not much different. I think, we have to remember that Liverpool have been, they exposed Alisson way, way, way too often last season. And it didn't feel like they'd learned that at all. I think everyone would just always jump on Trent for that back post header, but there's not a fullback unless Dan Burns playing right back for Liverpool, then you're going to get beat as a fullback if you come up against Mitrovic. Van Dijk and Matip should never have been allowing that to happen. That's the only person you had to keep out. And it's, I don't know, for me, it feels like a bit arrogance of Liverpool going to go turn up and turn them over. And Fulham came to play and were really good. Pereira is going to be an interesting headache for us all season as to whether we start him or not. Mitrovic could be just outstanding value. I mean, there's a lot of strikers we're after, but Mitrovic at 6.5 is probably the cheapest of the lot that we're looking at, and will continue to dominate, and he'll always get shots. It doesn't matter. He'll always get shots. And I think that the good part about Mitrovic is you look around the rest of the team and you think, who else really is there getting points? The fullbacks are not high scorers. I know Kenny Tete put the ball in for him, but Cabana and Reed look like they work hard. Paulina looked strong. I thought, Harrison Reed, tidy and all those things, but Tim Ream and Adarabioyo are not exactly, they're not going to keep clean sheets. So he doesn't really have to fight many people if he scores. They could lose 4-1 and he could still walk away with 7-8 points in some games.
Yeah.
So Mitrovic is definitely interesting from a Liverpool perspective. We're all going to end up with Darwin at some point. We always just need to have a Darwin plan because it's going to happen. It's such a physical presence.
Yeah.
Everyone's liking to say they sort of creator of chaos and brings the chaos and all those ones, but how else can you describe him? Is it just feels like an irrepressible force up there. I was a Diaz owner, and Diaz owners were very unlucky.
Very unlucky.
Of course, a beautiful finish on an offside one, and then hits the post on the one that's not. But I wouldn't panic on that. Pras, what about the double defence? Because you've been very staunch on the Robbo Trent. What's your immediate thoughts?
See, the thinking was that I went Robertson because of this game week 4 to 6 fixture crunch, right? Those 3 game weeks are within 1 week. So there's a midweek game week 5. And the thinking was I get a Robertson and I get 6 to 8 game weeks out of the guy in the best fixture run. And that was comparison to Diaz, because I felt that both have similar expected points. So go for the guy with better X minutes. Simple as that. But now Nunes makes me sort of think that is he going to block me from getting a striker who could score 6-7 goals in the next 6-7 game week. So I wasn't worried about Diaz and Robertson. I am worried about Nunes and Robertson. So when we come to my team, I could go to Nunes in game week 3 with one hit. That's it, -4. People talk about flexibility. 5 at the back gives a lot of flexibility. Well, I'll tell you now, Diaz, Robertson to 5.0 and a 4.0, and my 4.5 striker becomes Nunes. It's as simple as that. It's not that difficult. Whether I do it or not is another question. I need to see another game week. But look, I'm usually very cautious, but I'm very curious to see how Nunes fits into the team. I'm also open to an opportunity where if this guy is showing that he can match Salah, and we're talking about a Mane at 9 million. People were saying Diaz is a Mane at 9 million. I actually think what we've seen so far, it could be Nunes who's the Mane at 9 million. And if you're then given an opportunity to save 3 million, going Salah to Mane from last season, and instead have a Son, I'm calling it now. I'm open to a Salah to Son and a Jesus to a Nunes move. Not now, but in the medium term. And if it is forced now, then I can find a way as well. So I'm not opposed to it. I think Salah has been a little bit lucky with his returns in the Community Shield as well as game week 1. In both games, he looked fine, but he wasn't like the Salah we know, which is basically, bouncing on every opportunity, taking shots for fun. He got the goals. I mean, obviously one of them was a penalty, but over the last 2 games, he'll be fine. But if you have 2 things happening, Haaland could become a guy who you can say, look, I'm going to captain the guy. I don't mind going against Salah if I have a Haaland playing every game week and I can captain him. And therefore, I have an opportunity now at Liverpool to get a striker that is close to matching. He'll never match Salah, at least from what we know now, he won't be able to match. But it affords you a Son. It affords you a De Bruyne as well. So let's not forget that. So I'm actually much more open. This is just first thoughts based on just one game week. But my first thought was, look, Salah doesn't need to stay in our teams forever.
This is so since I started potting with Pras, I've never seen him have Son in his team. So I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for that day. Baker, I have a question for you. I guess it's a more of a football question, but could relate to FPL. Thiago is injured till around game week 8, according to the date, and game week 8 is his perspective of coming back, which means he's not going to come back for even more game weeks. How much of an effect does this have on the Liverpool team moving forward, do you think?
It's big. It is big. He's the passer, and Hendo was weird on the weekend. Like his old position where he used to have that little triangle with Trent and Salah, like that works, but he kept wandering out of position and ended up on the left quite a bit, and then Harvey Elliott came on and he sort of then just made that switch, almost took Thiago's role. He can't really cope on that side of it. His body's not there for him. Curtis Jones was, I think he's back soon. I think he might almost be back in training. I really dislike Curtis Jones when he plays on the right. He tends to try and get way too involved at too high a position. But on the left, if anyone remembers, like end of season before last, when he started coming in, he started on that left-hand side, and he's good on that left-hand side, coming in off his right foot. It does mean as well that Robbo gets further forward when you've got a right footer there, because you need some width. So that potentially is good for Robbo if Curtis Jones comes in as the left centre midfielder. But the ball then always switches to Trent and Salah on then. So I think it's a good thing if Curtis Jones, for the other assets, I don't think it's good for Liverpool, obviously, but I think it's good for the assets that we care about if Curtis Jones comes as that left centre midfielder. If it's just Milner, I mean, they need another centre midfielder.
For sure.
They've been 3 good guys, but they need to invest in it. People will say that Pep didn't really need Calvin Phillips, but it's like Liverpool could really do with Calvin Phillips.
Yeah, great signing.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. I think they should try and go in for someone over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, there's actually news out there about now we need a signing urgently, and I actually kind of agreed with it because Thiago is very injury prone, and it's hard to rely on him as your starting 11, as good as he is, it's very hard to rely on injury-prone assets. And, you've seen moments where Keita was hyped up when he was brought, and he's had moments where he was really, really good, and he's a good player, but he can't, keep it up with injuries. And it sounds like they're missing that, kind of long-term sort of midfielder that can really, enhance this team moving forward. So,
And yeah, I didn't even mention Keita because what's the point?
Exactly.
Only Liverpool fans mention him as the next prodigy.
But they're going to get a few weeks' time. Thiago will still be out, and they'll start having those Champions League games in. What do they do?
Yeah,
but he might just go full 4-2-4. He might. He's done it before.
Well, or 4-2-3-1. The one where Firmino plays with Nunes, because they've been talking about that. And that's also what makes me a little bit more comfortable on Nunes. I mean, if the guy was supposed to be eased in, but he's breaking the door, why would Klopp kind of keep him back or hold him back for what? I mean, if he's doing well in the league, I don't see why him and Firmino can't start together. Or is that what you meant by the two up top?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Elliott is likely to start, as the chat mentions as well, for now.
Okay, so let's come to FPL then. FPL. So people are asking us, shall we break our teams to get Nunes now? Baker, what do you think? I mean, should people sort of... let me actually give a 30-second. I'm conflicted because people can jump on now and enjoy the points before everyone catches on. Or people can be a little bit more cautious and not get the drop because Robertson will keep ticking along. Diaz will keep ticking along. You may get a few cameos from Nunes where he doesn't score, or during game week 4 to 6, when the games come thick and fast, he is rotated a little bit more. But what's your thought? Should people sort of jump in right now if they can?
I think this week, the first step is, did you do something silly? Did you take a punt, on something that... Well, the first thing is, did you put Kane in your team? And if you have, then you're going to go Kane to Haaland. That's what you're going to do. The second part is most people will roll. Now, the beauty of that when everyone rolls is you could be the person that jumps and you could take that. But I just tried that. Template strong. and going early when everyone else is not, taking that extra chance of I'm going to go Kane this week. It didn't work, and just be prepared that it might not work. It might not work. Diaz could easily, like you say, return 10 points. Robertson can easily do that. And what you're talking about is virtually all of us have got 3 Liverpool players.
Yeah,
Baker. So it's not just a transfer, is it? It's a hit.
Question: what if you missed that price rise and price change from Kane to Haaland?
I guess that brings you to the next question of how comfortable you're in captain Mo this weekend. Because if you're comfortable in captaining Mo, then I don't see why I wouldn't do it. If you're not comfortable in captaining Mo, and you're also not comfortable that the person that most people are going to captain is Erling and they're playing Bournemouth, you've got to just do something about it. But you've got to look at what other fires you've got and can you, where you're at. That's why I say the first thing is correct the mistakes. Second thing is, can you hold?
Yeah.
Third thing is take your risk appetite. And if you really fancy some gambles, now's the time, because a lot of people will be going, I haven't got a fire, or I have got a fire, I'm going to fix that, or I'm not going to do anything, so I want another week's information. If you're that kind of player that wants to get ahead of the game, then you could just go.
Yeah, my view on this is you don't want to bet against the house. So you bet, you tried, and it was actually a very, very logical punt for Kane game week 1, and then switch. You had the plan to switch to Haaland game week 2. Just do that. Even if you missed the boat, just do it. There are people who went freemium, who had Kane and Haaland. They could think about going to Nunes.
Yeah.
Not that Kane is a bad player, but you get 2.5 million out from that. But the problem they will have is they would have already also tripled up. Maybe not, actually. They would have gone for, one of the things going freemium was avoiding Robertson or a Diaz. So maybe these are the perfect examples of people who could actually jump on a Diaz. And hence, this is what people say. When you have a freemium, it does give you an element of your funds are concentrated. So you could jump on a player. This is exactly what people talk about, that you can jump on Nunes now, but you're doing it with the knowledge that you're basing it off 2 30, 40-minute appearances where he has looked amazing, but you don't know how this changes. Does Mo Salah come and tell him, hey, man, look, I didn't pass to Mane, but other people passed to me kind of thing? Or it's more that Nunes is the guy and they will work together and both can bang, right? It can be a Son and Kane situation. It's not that it has to be one or the other. So it's a tricky one. I think most people should collect more information. There's no need to be taking hits for taking out a Robertson or a Nunes or a Diaz for Nunes. But look, he's one to watch for sure.
Yeah, let's move to the next fixture if you guys don't mind. Okay.
Do you want to talk about Fulham first, though? Just a couple
point.
of observations on Fulham.
For sure. The questions we received about Fulham was mostly about Pereira, and obviously Mitrovic is certainly someone to talk about after his 2 goals. I know his fixtures, Fulham's fixtures get really good from, I believe it was Gameweek 8. But yeah, go ahead, Pras. What are your questions on?
No,
Fulham?
nothing. I mean, I just wanted to address the question. So I think the popular Pereira question was, is he playable? Answer is yes, he's playable. But so think of him as a Neto, essentially, and then take the decision. Would you rather play Neto or would you rather play Pereira? Now, I caution that Pereira, even though he looked good on the itis, he was the furthest forward actually from the touch map, but he had 2 penalty area touches all game. Now, this was Liverpool. Obviously, this was a difficult game, but monitor that. I wouldn't just jump on Pereira and say, I'll start him no matter what, because personally speaking, I have Bailey, I have James, and I have Pereira. I haven't even given it a second thought. Pereira's on the bench. James is starting, obviously, and Bailey's starting because he just plays for a better team who's playing at home. And as long as he gets minutes, he'll be in my team above that. But what do you guys think about this Pereira situation? Is he a starter over even a James? Which I don't know. Am I overplaying this question? I didn't think that was a contest.
No, it's not.
No.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't think that is. I don't think that's a contest. I think there's 2 dilemmas that people will have in their teams. I think for Pereira, I think one is Bailey, where there's a decision to be made, and then there's the ones that are the madmen like myself who got Perisic in.
Right.
So Perisic and Pereira, I think, is a conversation. There's 25% of the game with Perisic, and Bailey, there's about 15% or so of the game. So 40% of the game have got either a Bailey or a Perisic. And I think they've got a decision to look
Absolutely.
at. Kind of how you feel.
Yeah, I think bringing in Bailey was for the first 2 game weeks for me personally. And so I do want to give the first 2 game weeks a shot. And the convincing thing about Bailey in game week 1 was at least he played almost the whole game. So he wasn't the first or second sub, I believe. So that was a good sign. Also, I just think that he's a great player to have as your first bench member at 4.5. So just in case things go wrong and you need to play him, then he comes into the fold. But with Bailey having such a good fixture in game week 2, I think you should give him a shot. Granted, Aston Villa didn't play well game week 1, but it is just 1 game week. Also, how about Mitrovic? People are already jumping on him. I think, there's a bunch of transfers on Mitrovic, but your thoughts there, Pras?
I think he's great, man. I mean, I was very tempted to get him. And in fact, Zoff on the wire was also debating him. And then, we had actually 6.5 million floating around after the Perisic news. So we could downgrade the Perisic slot to a 5.0 million, and the Bailey slot could have become a 6.5 or a forward for 6.5. So we were very tempted. I'm not of the opinion that Mitrovic is a troll or whatever. That is all of the past. This is a different team, different manager. He's going to be the talisman that he showed that he was last year. He's going to be in our teams for sure. And this is what makes me nervous about going for Nunes now, is basically you've put so much funds up top that if you wanted to shift to a Mitrovic, of course, it's an easy downgrade, but you need to make room for Mitrovic. And maybe you hold off until he's played his 3 difficult games in the next 5 weeks. and game week 7 is the time to get him, but he'll certainly be in our teams.
Just a quick plug. If you want to really get to know about these promoted teams, FPL Wire did a promoted teams episode in preseason with, I believe it was FPL Irons, Luke, right? Yeah.
Luke, yeah.
That was an amazing pod. I just kind of like really got into how much knowledge that Luke has about these teams, and you can really kind of figure out what Pereira is to this team. So shout out to those guys there. Yeah.
I think sort of naturally moving on to Villa on this one, but the thing with Bailey and the same with Perisic in game week 3 is they're the early games. And FPL Villain, for example, is a really good source of information. I think we might get at least a very good clue as to whether Bailey starts this weekend. Yeah. If he does, I think you have to play him. And I think there's enough out there on Tottenham that in game week 3, we'll maybe get that information around Perisic too. So that's something for those people that have got these people to try and keep in the back of their mind is I'm really comfortable on Perisic for that reason.
So just a question: would you, if you have both Neto, Perisic, as well as Bailey, who would you start out of the 3?
If I had to choose one of the 3,
yeah,
Neto.
Interesting. Pras?
Leeds at home. I mean, they were in 4 at the back. Wolves are actually more adventurous than we remember them from last season, and in fact, early last season as well, they were, when they were 4 at the back, they were adventurous. So let's not again cloud our judgment by data, and this is odd coming from me, but yes, you have to observe the change in patterns. So if 4 at the back with this team is more attacking, of course they're missing a Jimenez, somebody on top who can kind of bring the guys into play. So if you put Jesus in the Wolves side, Neto and Podence will become amazing players because of that Jesus position. Obviously Hwang is not that, and you sort of have to take what you get, and this is a 5.5 million midfielder who looked good. So
yeah, and Wolves just signed I'm gonna pronounce this so badly, but Guedes as well, and he's is that okay? He's obviously a very quality striker when he's playing well, so it'll be very interesting what he does to the team. But again, he literally just got there, I think 2 days ago. So
my understanding though is he's also one who plays as a inverted forward. So he's not the Jimenez replacement. He's, in fact, people are speculating even a Neto replacement if he ended up leaving. So one to watch, but I think you back the team against Leeds, and Leeds looked good themselves. So we'll come to Leeds maybe when we get to it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I guess next game would be what should we do? Should we do? We'll skip around, I guess. We'll go to the Chelsea one.
Go for it.
Okay, so we have Chelsea's fixtures. Okay. Yep. So Chelsea just won 1-0. Obviously, a lot of questions in regards to James. Chilwell came in and had a pretty decent game, but got taken off, I think, 63rd minute. There's also Cucurella behind there. Some community questions. Neto synthesis asks, if Chelsea looks sluggish against Spurs, do we keep their assets, James included? And then FPL Big Apple, great name, by the way. What do you do if you have Mount? I think he's a hold. See what we do with 2 transfers in game week 3. But Foden and Bowen seem to be calling me over. FPL Heritage asks, what would you need to see from Mount and Sterling to bring them in for game week 3? So generally, a lot of questions about Mount as well as what to do with James. Your thoughts on this game first, Baker?
Look, I think Chelsea, they manage games really well. That's what they do, and for FPL perspective, teams that manage games, we don't want to overinvest in attack. That's my one concern, say, with Arsenal, is that Arteta, last season likes to manage games, and you're like, that might limit the amount of goals they can score. And Chelsea are in a similar position. And when they've got a lot going on, it's even more important for them to grind out the points, get the points on the board, get the points on the board, get the points on the board. That for me makes defensive assets really good, even in tough games like the Tottenham one. Would it be surprising if it came to a 1-0, 2-0? Even as a Tottenham fan, no. We haven't scored, I think, since 2018 there, if you don't include the Rudiger own goal. So that's exactly what they'll play for. Does that make me excited about the attacking ones? Not so much, but they're not just going to manage the game if Tottenham score. Like, if Tottenham do score, who knows what happens? It's all game state with them. They got ahead, stupid penalty right on half time. Tuchel gets him in, says, good, manage this game out. They manage the game out. It's how it works. So I don't think you can massively read into it. Very hard to read into James, his performance, because he played 3 different positions in one game. I mean, it's unbelievable. He played 3 different positions in one game, and then Tuchel at the end of it says that he's kind of still struggling for fitness, and you're like, he's literally covered your whole back line for you. But the great part, I think, for it is that Alonso used to take quite a lot of corners, and whereas James is a much better corner taker than Chilwell, so we saw huge numbers. The fact that Chilwell got an assist and at no point was in the bonus. On 60 minutes touched, so even before, don't think because he was subbed off early, he wasn't in the bonus. He wasn't in the bonus when he went off. So that shows you the baseline of players like Aspi, the baseline of James, certainly. Just all that's got to happen is someone touches one of those crosses, but you just saw it, he just chugs away on it. That being said, Chilwell is still what he is, which is the prime driver into the box. And if they're not scoring, again, we could see ourselves you could easily see yourself in game week 3 wanting to attack with Chilwell, Leeds and Leicester.
Yeah. I mean, if you're on Chilwell, then what's your thoughts on Cucurella? Because he was a bit vague, right? Tuchel. Koulibaly looks very good, left-sided. I mean, that's really where he's always played. Even though he's right-footed, Chelsea fans tell me that's his position. So where does Cucurella fit into the team? I mean, maybe he could be a backup to both Chilwell and Koulibaly, or Koulibaly could move as the right-sided centre-back. All of this basically means it's great for James, that, James will get more time on the right wing, even though within the game, you never know how the dynamic changes. Aspi is too old to play that position now, so it's basically his, unless another one of the wingers plays right wing back. But on the left, I was I was so excited when I saw Chilwell start, and I was really regretting it. Had we got any hints that Chilwell was ready, he would have been in, because I was looking for that Perisic slot for someone, and I ended up going Diaz. So the question is, what does Cucurella do? Maybe we don't have the answer yet, but that's something to really monitor, where he fits into the team, right?
Yeah, very much so. There's for The Athletic, there's a guy who writes for The Athletic called John Muller. He does loads of really good visuals, and he does a thing around where teams control possession. And the one place that Chelsea never control the possession is the left side in their own half, because Chilwell just goes. And I do think maybe that you could see that they want to fill that position, because a bit like what we talked about earlier is that you could attack Zinchenko, you can also attack Chilwell. We saw Alonso last season get books so many times just pulling back the right winger, and it's like maybe they'll play Cucurella as the left wing back in the more defensive games and play Chilwell as in the more attacking games. So we might see Cucurella. They might want him to face up against Kulusevski this weekend.
Right.
Really difficult to understand, but that's why we just got with them. We've got to take more information. But I think Cucurella, if he nails a place in that team, is unbelievable value at 5.0.
Also, against Spurs, there's definitely the possibility all 3 of them start, right? James could play the Aspi role, and Cucurella could play the right side, and Chilwell could play the left, and sort of slow down Son's speed. So, as Pras mentions, it'll be very interesting to see how these 3 develop, and who kind of starts where, and maybe we see all 3 of them start at times as well.
I was almost certain he'd play Reece James at right centre back pre-season, but pre-season I was thinking right centre back against Tottenham. That's what he'll do. I don't think he'll do that now. I think he will play right wing back. He is now Aspi starting that contract. I think he would stick with Aspi. I think he will go with the tried and tried. I think we saw managers this weekend in general go with the players that they trust, and I think he would try and trust Aspi against Son. Whether that's a good thing for Son, we'll see. But I think he'll play Aspi, and I think it'd be the same team, but maybe Cucurella for Chilwell.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. One sec, Andy.
Yep,
Question on set pieces. So you brought up a
Yep.
great point. James took 13 corners, even though they were rubbish. He was pretty bad at them, at least from memory, what I saw.
They were rubbish.
But looking at the stats, there was one successful corner out of 13 that he took. I don't know what Scout categorizes as successful, but I won't be surprised it's the one that reached ahead of a Chelsea player. Chilwell took 2 corners. Cucurella took a corner when he came in. Mount took none. And even on free kicks, 0 free kicks for Mount. James took 4, and that's it. So let's get back to Mount then. I mean, people bought an 8 million steady player who's on set pieces, who should kind of tick along. And then if you're saying that Chelsea isn't the most attacking side, which I agree with, I mean, they're not, I think, in the tier 1, which is Liverpool, Spurs, and City. So if you're buying a tier 2 attacker from an 8 million price bracket, what do you do with him? Is he still that hold if he's not on set pieces?
Yeah, personally, Mount is one of those long-term hold types of players in my point of view, because he's not going to haul those 12, 15 pointers, but he'll get you the steady 1 goal, 1 assist type of game, possibly, both of them in one game. But, there was a stat I read earlier today about how Kulu has the 3rd most attacking returns since the start of 2022, basically since Conte sort of took over. And you remember a time where before I'm going into Spurs here, but before Conte came, there was question marks about whether Son and Kane would ever combine to score again, and the lethal aspect that they were missing was other people that are able to score. I'm sure we'll get into it soon. And so Kulusevski has to become a much more interesting option than someone like Mount for me personally. When you move away from Mount, it's a risky move, because it's not really a hole you need to put out or a fire you need to put out. It's just kind of taking the risk that, Mount could do well, but you're trying to look for a better upside and a better potential sort of more explosive asset elsewhere. So that 8 million on Mount for a Chelsea team that's still a lot of question marks. When you think of Mount, Havertz, as well as Sterling now, you would think they're going to interloop. Sterling moves right, Sterling moves to the center, many attacking routes. But in the first game, you really didn't see that at all. Granted, it is just one game. So not so bullish on Mount's perspectives moving forward. On top of the set pieces, as you mentioned. Baker?
I think the thing with Mason Mount, I always think of him as a bit of a flat track bully. He rarely scores the first goal. That's it. I might not be completely right here, but in my mind is when I think of the hauls, they're in the games that they win comfortably. Southampton last season, Norwich, obviously. We had them Leeds last season. Those were all away games, but they were all away games they won comfortably, where they score 3 or so more. I think he scored at home against Leeds as well when they scored 3. So I think if I look at those goals, I think he's scoring when Chelsea score plenty. It's almost like I don't know a certain amount, but it's almost like he's one of the lads. So it's like, I want to get in on this. It gets a bit greedier towards the end. Even in pre-season, I saw one where he tapped one in like 4 yards out. It's like he doesn't score those when it's 0-0 in a Premier League game. He is the one that wants to jump in on. And that's the thing I think isn't great for him. We didn't fully expect Everton to be as defensive as they were. They were a lot more defensive than I expected them to be. Tottenham, if it starts getting feisty and it starts becoming a goal fest, and those Conte ones can happen, He could haul. But then I look at the games after it, and I look at Leeds and I look at Leicester, and I'm like, those are the times where there could be games where Chelsea score 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And Mount then becomes a really good player. I just don't think he's the one that gets the first goal very often in a 1-0 win.
Nice.
It's fair. It's fair. Look, and I think the backdrop to people listening is we're not suggesting you get rid of the player immediately. In fact, the overarching message is sit tight. There's a lot more information. In fact, twice the amount of information you'll have by Sunday night or Monday night. So sit tight, but that's a trend. Monitor. Maybe James was so rubbish that Mount will take the corners back or take more set pieces back. So it's just, we're going off one game week. Mount is a fine asset. We're in a situation where 8 million is, you could argue that it has plenty of options, or you can make an argument that it has very few, simply because we'll come to Man City and their wide forwards. We'll come to Spurs. Saka is kind of blocked because of the things we talked about with Martinelli and Jesus. So it's a difficult price point. So if you're looking to restructure the team, maybe think about that with Mount. But yeah, it's one to monitor. So that's all. That's all on Chelsea, I think.
Nice. Any Everton thoughts? There was actually one question about Everton. FPL In Focus said, if you're planning a game week 5 wildcard, are there any Everton assets worth considering? Gordon, Gray, any?
Wait for
Work
game
it
week
out
4.
later.
Yeah, they're just so a lot of injuries too, right? I think they had 2 major injuries in the first game, and also they just sit back and there's like 10 guys defending this entire game. So yeah,
The fear is the same one with Villa, unfortunately, that the team is okay. They're trying to be more defensive. This 5 at the back looks like it's here to stay because they've signed a couple of more centre backs, and Cody is basically the sign that it's a 5 at the back that they're going for. Problem is the manager. Do you back the manager to make them defensively solid? There's one thing to play in a defensive mindset, but if you're going to do that and just lose 1-0 every game, what's the point? So nothing to actually add on Everton. They have no attackers of interest, no defenders of interest. If it comes, then we'll talk about it.
okay, awesome. Okay, before we move to the next team and fixture, if you guys could please like the video as well as subscribe to FF Scout. FF Scout has many member tools that you can use and it really helps us. So Pras and I have been loyal members to it, and it'll definitely help upgrade your game as well as a lot of good content out there. So do check it out. Okay, so
and
next,
you can subscribe without membership as well.
yeah, subscribe without membership.
Yeah.
Man, I'm really bad at advertising. But
Go on.
okay, next one we have not Everton, Man City, West Ham versus Man City. It was a 2-0 game. Started off pretty cagey, and then once Man City sort of found their feet, became another dominating performance. And I know Baker shared a very interesting touch map of Antonio, which I won't share, but maybe you could enlighten us on what that was, Baker.
I was just saying this, we especially early in the season, we see lots and lots of touch maps. People call them he maps and all of those type of things. And if anyone goes and looks at the average positions for West Ham, it looks like Antonio is the best player we should own all weekend. Like, he is as far forward, he's 20 yards in front of everybody else. He's right up there as the prime number 9 you could ever have. But it's because he only has things where he touches the ball, and that's where it was. And he had 11 touches in the entire game. Had 2 passes in the entire game. Like, he's not involved. So sometimes people's positions on a heat map are because they weren't involved, and there's always game state. It's a bit like the Darwin one. What do you want to see from a forward coming on? You want to see him further forward than the person that came on for him. You certainly don't want to see it drop off. Well, that's what you saw. And it's like, good context, what I expect. Antonio's one looks like he, dominated City. He was up there, and it's like, no, he just didn't touch the ball at all. And when he did, it was about 30 yards out. Other than that, he just walked about. Yeah. They just did not give them a chance. Absolutely strangled it. I said on our pod on the weekend is my one massive learning is look at both sides of the matchup much, much more often, because Ben Johnson at centre-back, as soon as that team sheet, it was like, for me as a Kane owner, no chance I'd have taken that risk if I'd have known that Ben Johnson was going to play, or had any sniff of it that was going to be the case. Just hadn't fully taken that bit of information in. So that's a bad. That's why when I say about is it a mistake or is it an error on the Kane one, yeah, it is for me, because I hadn't fully taken in the information of West Ham, and if I had all the right information and had got that, I wouldn't have made that move. And yeah, City, they're just so good, mate.
I mean, it's. Do you have that touch map, Andy, of Man City?
Let me get.
I just wanted to. So this is off a retweet that Luke Disable made on Twitter. It's by a guy called Om Arvind, and he was talking about how City was set up. And there's all this talk about how will City accommodate for Haaland, and it's again very early days, but obviously Pep is trying to make this work, and no surprises that this system accommodates for a Haaland type striker. What it does is there's three big changes. The first big change is that both the fullbacks are inverted. So if you see in this touch map, Walker, quite surprisingly, and this is not normal, is your what number was Walker?
Number 2.
Number 2, correct. So he's in fact as forward as a Cancelo, which normally is not the case. He's the one sitting back with the Diaz and Laportes or Stones. So in this case, he is actually coming in forward. Why is he doing that? Is because De Bruyne and Gundogan were the ones who were sort of pressing alongside each other to sort of protect Haaland as the guy if he's not being as energetic as Pep wants. So that's the first thing. Now, because they're inverted, who is providing the width? It's basically Grealish and in this case Foden. So implications to that is, number one, Mahrez can't do that, or he cannot rely on Mahrez as much to do that, to come back and provide the width, to collect the ball, to move it forward. So what that means is Foden on the right and Grealish on the left could be more regular than we've seen. Obviously, Foden didn't even play at all on the right last season. That was the second thing. And the third, as I said, the 2 8s, which is Gundogan and De Bruyne, both sort of interchanged in getting forward. Both were semi-attacking. The news about Bernardo Silva and the fact that he could go to Barcelona could actually be interesting for Gundogan. But the final observation was this system essentially means that we are there to feed you Haaland. The XG for Haaland was 0.87 from the game. Who was the next highest? Nobody over 0.2. Nobody even got close to taking shots or being around the box. It was this guy. They were all meant to feed him. So this tells me Haaland is great. No great shakes there. Everyone knows that. They're setting up for him. But it also tells me that, we have to be a little bit more careful about watching Foden's positioning, watching Grealish's positioning, how involved they are in the next couple of games.
Yeah. When you look at that heat map, it's actually a full-on Bielsa, that is, of Leeds of last season. The 2-3-2-3 basically is how the formation works out. And it's, if you think about that season at the start of, not last season before, Bamford, it all just ends up feeding into that Bamford. Now replace Bamford with Erling Haaland and you replace all the others around them, so it's not Klitsch running in as one of the dual 10s. It's Kevin De Bruyne. Yeah, it's like, that is a seriously attacking team. But like that Bielsa one, it actually is seen as a shell basically to push it through to the number 9. That's you can't go against that.
There's a couple things I want to say here. You mentioned the Cancelo and Walker position, and you could see it in the game. Cancelo is basically a midfielder, and Gundogan is very interesting because at 7.5, there's talks about Bilva now moving on, which maybe solidifies his spot there. Last year, Man City scored 99 goals in the Premier League, which is number 1. I think Liverpool scored 94, so close second. And then you look at the top goal scorers in the Premier League. First 5 or 6 is non-Man City players. Then I think it's KDB, maybe a little more down. There's Sterling. And then they're all bunched up, right? Foden and even Gundogan and I'm forgetting names here, Mahrez maybe. So it just goes to show that we all know this, right? Everybody scores on this team. It's really spread out. And so the thing that makes it difficult to pick out the right Man City player from the midfield is you have to sort of time it right and also get lucky. In the last 2 seasons as well, if you take certain periods of the season, like such as the Christmas period where there's a lot more fixtures, even same pattern, right? It's very spread out the goals. You bring this tactic that Pras mentioned plus Holland into the fold. Now you have a beast of a goal scorer in kind of like Aguero like seasons. And maybe the difference here is that maybe you don't go for the wide guys in Foden and Grealish and Mahrez, and you go for the KDB and the Gundogan and the guys who's going to run alongside Haaland and sort of make those darting into the box runs as well. So I'm really keen on trying to figure out when to time the next sort of Man City attacking asset because, as you mentioned, Baker, they're going to score a bunch of goals and you want to have some fun and you want to be involved in it. But good luck picking out the right one, basically, is the point I was trying to make.
Absolutely.
It's the season of double city defense, man. That's where, again, we're extrapolating based on early data, early information. But if it's the season of Nunes, Haaland, Mitrovic, let's say, after Jesus' fixtures kind of slow down after game week 8, I think that could be the template, Haaland, Nunes, and Mitrovic. Then you have a Salah or a Son. You don't have a lot of money for punting on a Man City midfielder. Why wouldn't you punt on the best defense? Where, look, if Walker is the one that is better in possession. So originally people didn't want Walker because of nailness potentially, or the fact that he could, he offers nothing. Now he still may offer not a lot, but he's getting more forward for 5.0 million. If he nails down that place or continues to play there, you sort of make that position your own because the risk was that Cancelo plays on the right, Ake could play on the left, and then you'd have Stones and Diaz while Laporte is out. That's the Walker risk. But if Walker is doing a job on the right, because inverted fullback is not an easy position, it requires a midfield-like precision in passing, possession, retaining possession. It's not easy. So if that is working, I don't see that changing, even if Laporte comes back, for instance.
Yeah.
Walker is amazing at that price then.
Nice. Also, that we're all so hyped up about Erling, but the first penalty that he got, I don't know if you guys noticed, but that pass wasn't the greatest pass, and that little spurt of speed for a guy that size, he's the one that got the penalty. I think
Absolutely.
80% of strikers would not have been able to get to that ball. So imagine once they start clicking, the Community Shield too, KDB, there was moments where he got really mad at Erling because their communication was off. So he's only going to get better, and he's already got 2 goals in 70 minutes. So this next game is automatic captain for me.
See, but teams will sit back. They know that. This is not the Bundesliga, or this is not Dortmund. Dortmund's a good team with respect, but Man City, people just sit back. Unless it's Liverpool, he's not going to get space behind. But even Chelsea won't give them space. Even Conte won't give them space.
But
so where will he run in? Yeah,
that's why he's so valuable to them this season, because they sat back last year against Man City and they had no route to cross, right? And you can tell they're trying to get the cross into him, and we'll see what that does. He could lay it off. Maybe he gets a couple headers here and there, and that weird sort of like karate kick he does. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else to add on City?
I think we'll wait and see, mate. On those ones, is Ake interests me if he keeps his position. It seems like everything's aimed at him. He was one that I was really toying with, but I did see a lot of City fans saying that Stones was going to get in, and it just spooked me off. But he's one I'm definitely keeping an eye on. Cheap.
Nice. Andy, let's go to Spurs, because I want full Baker
Breakdown.
views on Spurs, on Perisic, on Kulusevski. So let's jump to Spurs.
Okay, take it away, Baker. I'll sort of guide you on the questions we got, Baker. So some of the questions from the community, FPL Voice says, can Kulu cover Kane and Son? Bukasani Desh asks, how will Richarlison affect Kulu? So there's some Kulu questions here. And then there's the Perisic sort of, I guess, dilemma. At Tom Reed says, if Perisic doesn't start game week 2, how long should we hold him for, especially considering Cesc played well? Yes, he did. And I'm conscious of price drop. Mitch King asks, Spurs wingbacks, stay awake for the next few weeks. And FPL reckon as Perisic, obviously terrific attacking potential, but rotation risk. What do we do with him? So, guys, if you don't know, Baker is the community to go Spurs man, Spurs fan at heart, and obviously the number one Sun fan. So, yes, please go.
I'll start on Perisic because I own Perisic. And as I mentioned earlier, the Wolves game is the first game of Game Week 3. I think you have to take the drops, because if he gets that Wolves game, who knows? Genuinely, who knows with it? Is he's definitely the leader in the team. He's a leader in the squad. All the wing backs are talking about how much they're learning from him, how he's guiding them. Hey, there comes a time when you're Ivan Perisic and it's like, yeah, it's all good. I'm helping these guys, but I want to be on the pitch. And I think Conte is a respectful manager, but he is a ruthless manager. And if he thinks it's the best solution, would I be surprised if he started it this weekend? I wouldn't be surprised, because it's a massive game, that Chelsea game. Both teams really need to win it. I think they will put the team out they feel is the best team for that weekend. And if he feels that it's time, then he'll see that it's time. I've got him in my team, and do I think necessarily we'll keep a clean sheet? Not really. So I feel like if you want to bench him, you can do, but could he in any game turn up and get 15 points? Yeah. So if you've got him, you had to be comfortable that he was going to be benched in Game Week 1. So your decision shouldn't have changed. I don't understand it. Is you thought that might happen. You might not have thought that Sessegnon would play as well as he did, which is true. But your opinion on Perisic as a player was what it was. And you were thinking Game Week 2 is not great anyway, but I feel like others will be looking for him in Game Week 3, Game Week 4 if he's starting. Now, you're behind everybody else if you've got him at the moment. But don't be behind, then move him out, and then be behind again, because actually you've been using your transfers and now other people trying to be getting him in. That's just doubling down in a bad way. And if there were other 5.5s, fine. But there's not really. So if he goes to 5.3, you're still going to swap him from a 5.1 or something that's doing quite well. I know everyone hates to lose the money on this one, but this is one where I'm like, you knew what you were dealing with, and you knew you were probably getting into a place where you were going to lose money. So just, it's just, it feels like it's chicken that you don't need to go with at the moment. Where would you go? Trippier, and then the fixtures get worse. So you're going, what I'm going to do is bring Trippier in, but then rotate him with Pereira. Just stay with it. I think on that one. The rest of them, the front three. And hey, let's just play that back actually though. But if Royal keeps his place, that's really, I think it's good for Kulusevski, that one, because Royal in general will stay out wide and Doherty will come inside, and that could be the dovetail that you see with Kulusevski. It's like us fan thinking. If they train all week, and they've got all week at the moment to train for games, and he says, Doherty, you're staying on the right wing or you're not playing, well, that's what he'll do. So yeah, we have to just wait and watch with Spurs. I think is would you bring him in this week? No. I mean, loads are. We've got a price rise on Kulu, but I would wait and watch. Would I take out Kane for Haaland? Yes, I would. Do I think that Tottenham can go and win at Chelsea? Yes. If they do, will it likely be Kulusevski and Kane? Yes. But everybody else has got really good fixtures too. So, why are you taking that chance? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. In terms of the front three, saw it a bit in pre-season with Kulusevski that he suddenly looks a bit more selfish. I think we've seen a few interviews with him as well and stuff, and you can suddenly tell he's not a diminutive character. He's a big character, and he's a young character, and he's only going to grow in terms of as a player as he is. He's got absolute beautiful left foot, which will set up chances for people that are coming in and attacking that far post, i.e. Perisic, Sessegnon, or potentially Son. felt like it bypassed Kane a little bit, his passes in this game, because it's sort of going the longer route to him. So can he cover? Maybe. If he ups his goals, maybe. I mean, he's definitely turning assists in. The one great thing he has as well is he has a high baseline for a winger. He got 14 on his baseline. So once he scores, that's 32. Hard to catch. Son is would really struggle to catch him, and most of the defenders will, unless they get return and a got.
Just to clarify for the listeners, baseline as in bonus points, correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So he's quite likely to end up in that place. I definitely would want to look at him for game week 3. Kulusevski, I think we'll learn a bit for him. I think it's worthwhile taking a little. Watch those prices. He could be 8.2 by the time we end up needing to go for him, and you have to find somewhere else for him. But see how it goes. Yeah. Kane suddenly, looks like the 5th worst asset of the team. Is that the asset positions are the front 3 and the wing backs. Kulusevski and Son were looking to break the line. Son was greedy. Could have fed him. But I think he wants to score, Son. And if Kulusevski wants to score and Son wants to score, that's not so good for Kane. Yeah. What Richarlison does, we'll see. But again, this weekend, we'll have people that will make assumptions. It'll be game state. If Tottenham are losing, he'll come on. Like you said, Darwin would not have got the amount of minutes he got if they didn't have an injury and weren't winning the game. So it'll be the same with Richarlison. If things aren't going well, he could be on at halftime. Do I think it's for Kulusevski? I don't know. Don't know.
I was going to say that's the point of what we're doing. We're only talking about what we've seen. We haven't seen Richarlison, right? So we can't. It would be crystal balling like we were doing preseason on where he starts and where he fits in.
Yeah,
and I love this the breakdown you just did, because basically you presented everybody the information, and now you have the information and you can do whatever you want with it, but you can collect more information as game week 2 happens, game week 3 happens. But it's very interesting that you mentioned Royale helps Kulusevski, Baker, because we know that Doherty makes inside runs and Kulu plays wide. Opposite happens when Royale plays. Royale goes wide, he has that speed, and then Kulu can make. I think his 3rd goal or something for Spurs was a very similar situation there. Perisic, there was interview. I think there was some interview where before the game he went up to Sessegnon and told him, "Hey, get in the box because you can take advantage of Kyle Walker-Peters' height." And I thought that was very interesting. Basically, Conte brought in Perisic to be his go-to starter in important games. Class is still permanent. He's way ahead of Sessegnon, but he's got that age against him, 33, within 2 years, 35. So you bring a veteran into the locker room, you teach Sessegnon the ropes, you kind of, develop him as the year goes by. And so I think that kind of makes it a little difficult to be fully confident that when you have a guy like Perisic, he's going to be playing week in and week out, because Sessegnon is now the future for Spurs on the left in many ways. And so, as you mentioned, you take the 30 minutes, you take that one game versus, I think, Wolves in game week 3, because at any moment in time, he could haul at 5.5.
I agree with everything that's been said on Perisic. Normally, we don't tell you what to do. Don't sell Perisic. Simple as that. It would be unwise to sell him if you own him. What you're going to have is game week 3. Let's say he's benched game week 2. Game week 3, people will panic and sell. And you are going to make up your points in game week 3 and game week 4. No matter where, he's going to be involved. There's midweek fixtures coming between 4 and 6. You will get your points back. So do not sell Perisic. Hold him. He could even play on the right if he's happy with Sessegnon. Perisic can equally play on the right. So hold on to him. Everything else, I think, agreed 100%.
And Baker,
Just
you must be really happy as a Spurs fan that it was not Son and Kane that scored, but other guys
yeah,
that got involved, right? Mm.
yeah, definitely. Look, it's the next evolution that the team's looking for, is that they've got an attacking five and that they don't rely on two people. The thing this week, let's say I bench Perisic for Pereira, which is where I'm currently at until I know more. If I took a hit to take Perisic out, then that's the equivalent of Pereira getting a clean sheet, because he's going to get 2 points minimum. He's now on 6 points. And it's like, if I went to Trippier because he's got a good fixture this week, but then Trippier hasn't got a good fixture next week. But if Perisic suddenly got in, I'm like, I want him back. It's just not worth it this week, is because you literally your two moves are fix the pain or roll it. Just stay at that. Like, don't over confuse it. I don't think. I think everything else is just too much noise.
Yep. All right. That's
right.
on
That was great.
Spurs. Yeah, look, I think Spurs are still, they will be third. I mean, they're top of the table. We're talking about their FPL assets as if, oh my God, what a disaster going for Kane or Son. I mean, they scored more goals, twice the number of goals that City scored. It was a fine move to go for Kane, but you don't want to go against Haaland in game week 2, so make the switch. But I'm pretty sure we'll be back on Spurs assets very soon.
Yep.
Pras, I want to go to you one more game, and this is your team, United versus Brighton.
I'm going to avoid that topic altogether. In fact, what I was going to do is, we've gone quite long, so I was going to do just some of the teams that we've missed and do a 1 minute on all those teams and what stood out, and I'll quickly kind of talk through Man United because there's nothing to talk about. But look, Aston Villa. So Bournemouth, Aston Villa. Aston Villa looked poor. We talked about it, but Bailey was their best player, and most people say that he's good for another start. He played 90 minutes. The only issue is that if Gerrard comes out in the press conference on Friday and says, we may think, we need to change up the attack. It looked blunt. And if they move to a 2 up front, which is Watkins and Ings, then that means Bailey is out, essentially, because he's not going to drop Coutinho. And that's the risk. So monitor that. But other than that, until Bailey misses a game, he should be starting for you. It's a good fixture against Everton. That's the first thing. Leeds Wolves. Leeds look very, very good. Both in attack, defensively they look better. What's happened is basically Jesse Marsch has gotten rid of his 2 expensive players, but gotten in 5 or 6 players that work with him, who have either worked with him or work in the system. So it's a much more systemic team, and Jesse Marsch is making them work and look a lot better than we remember the Leeds. So we need to get 2 things out of our head. Number one, Leeds is not the team that people will batter. At least they don't look like that from game week 1. So they should be defensively better. And secondly, they have some cheap assets in attack that you could go for. So for example, Aronson, he did not get a goal. He was very close to getting it. Ait Nouri got the own goal, but I was delighted that he didn't get the goal because I didn't want people to jump on him, because I was very happy looking at his numbers, looking at what he was doing for the team. He'll be involved. And Loki, he's my Bailey exit. I mean, I may actually just go against the Neto bandwagon and go for Aronson directly. So that was, something for the Leeds game. Newcastle, no surprises. They won 2-0, but it was on paper one of the easiest fixtures this game week. So them winning with a clean sheet is no surprise, but the early signs are that they're keeping the momentum. We saw that they were a very good defense, and that continued, even though Botman didn't start. And they're an efficient attacking team with Wilson, and if Wilson is playing, he'll get the goals. Trippier will be attacking, and that's about it on Newcastle. And then the last thing I had was on Leicester. Leicester look good in attack, which we know. They look bad in defense, which we know. So we didn't actually learn much about Leicester. Dewsbury Hall will be a name that people will sort of think about for cheap enablers, but Madison looked good, Vardy looked good. That's not new information. So that's all I had. I'm not going to talk about Man United. Anything else you guys have to add?
No more than that. I think Madison looks. If that team stays as it is, Madison is taking corners both sides. Is so involved. Free roll.
Yeah,
he's definitely in the equation. Definitely in the equation.
Now that he's staying, he's definitely one in that 8 million bracket that people should target. I'm quite confident we'll have 3 Leicester assets on a game week 9 wildcard. I'm calling it now. So
Additionally, I think Brighton have really good fixtures from around 3 to 8. So maybe another Bailey exit there. I know you mentioned Aronson, Pras. I think I had him in my game week 1 team before the Perisic news, but maybe Trossard comes into the fold as well, because as you mentioned, I think it was So Far who tweeted, people are talking about Man United playing bad and nobody's talking about Brighton playing well, and even guys like Welbeck were very active, and I don't know, I really enjoyed watching Brighton play. Sorry, Man United fans, that was not a diss or anything like that. But,
Brighton, but there was no new information on Brighton. We know they're an efficient team, well coached, and the fact that they played as efficiently after losing Dan Burn, Cucurella, Bissouma, they're still playing the same way, which is why they're very well coached and a team to back. This is why people love Sanchez. You won't get a lot of save points, but you will get clean sheets out of him because of the way the team functions.
Yep. Potter magic. Okay.
Yeah. And look, I mean, people will complain if I don't talk about Man United. Wait and watch. That's what my thing was. They play Liverpool game week 3. I always was cautious about their assets. When the Ronaldo news broke that he's staying, Martial was injured. Martial was the only guy who I was thinking was worth a punt first couple of game weeks. And then he switched to a Mitrovic. That was the route I had in mind. Once that was out, it's not something you want to go into. There's a lot of issues at the club. There are new signings that are coming in, which could change. So I am optimistic about the season. I'm very optimistic about the manager, but I have my FPL hat here, and my FPL hat says just don't touch until game week 4 at a minimum. And by the way, one interesting point about Man United, every 3 game weeks, they have a difficult fixture. So they have Liverpool game week 3. Then they have, I think, Arsenal game week 6. Then they have Man City game week 9, Chelsea game week 12. So there will be no point where you will come to a Man United player and say, okay, now I have a sea of green fixtures, I'm going to take a punt. You will have to take a leap of faith with those difficult fixtures when you get the conviction.
Nice. Baker, anything to add for you before we go to the bus teams?
No. United won't play Potter every week. They will, but they do, like you say, play good man. There's lots of good managers in the league, and Ten Hag is a good manager, but it's going to take time.
Yep.
So see what it's like in a few weeks. Probably no pick outs for me on the rest of them. Newcastle is definitely a big watch, and I know Newcastle, if you've got in their assets, their fixtures get a bit good, bad in a few weeks' time, but they could genuinely just be a very good team. Now, they've been a very good team for a long time. They're playing in a really fluid way. I think the way that we've seen with them, I would really be tempted to not move on a Trippier, for example, and take an extra week and play a Pereira, or do whatever you can to not move those players on. I would be, because they could be unbelievable value. And like Pras said earlier, is we need to try and find these 3, 4, 5 value assets even now. And then that means we haven't got a wild card so quickly, or we get that information and haven't got them, and then we wild card and we can have some fun.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Before we go bus teams, thank you, Hold My Coffee mug. If you could do quick plug, if you could like the video stream today, as well as subscribe if you haven't, it'll really help us get out there. So bus teams, Pras and I have the exact same teams.
Embarrassing, man.
I know what you're thinking. But I honestly had Perisic and Aronson in my team until that last minute news. Usually Aronson.
Oh, Aronson.
Yeah,
okay.
Aronson. And then, I didn't like Neto, so I went for the Bailey, and Diaz was the suggestion of the great FPL Salah, and also I know you're usually the voice of reason, Pras, but believe it or not, I was the voice of reason towards our good friend Ted Talks FPL. So he also has basically the same team. A lot of people have the same team, but the season starts now, so we'll see how it goes. What are your thoughts?
So go on then. What are you doing? You must be taking a hit this week.
No, I'm banking the transfer. My team is great for this game week, and then next week I'll be transferring like a madman. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. How about yourself?
No, it's the same. Look,
Mm.
the only thing in the bus team that I'm contemplating is the Gerrard press conference. So whether I play Pereira or Bailey, and that's all. If he comes and talks about a change in system, change in attack, I will 99% play Bailey, because if I don't hear anything or if I don't get a concrete sense that he's not going to start, it's also the first fixture, by the way. So we may get some early news.
Yeah.
That's the only change that will happen. And might as well talk captaincy now that I know everyone will be on Haaland, but let's give the guys who haven't made the Kane to Haaland switch a fair bit to think about. I personally don't think there's a lot between Salah and Haaland. There's a lot of recency in our decision making. Yes, Palace is a good defense, but away from home, Palace were not great last season. So Liverpool at home, Mo Salah is not a bad captain at all. And it's one that you can easily look at if you wanted to go different, if you wanted to not go for Haaland and stick it out with Kane, or if you had a different structure. For example, I know Az has KDB and Salah. I can totally see him going for Salah. I mean, what do you think, Baker? It's closer than people are making it, right?
You just go Salah. Just find a way to go Salah. If you haven't got either of Salah or Haaland, then get one.
Yeah, where's
Just
the money?
get one. You know, is that's my feeling on those two. We're facing into the Bruno Salah situation that people should not forget that season where we basically hated Bruno for about 18 weeks. We owned him every week and we didn't captain him, and he gave us a rank drop every time he stepped on the pitch.
Oh, man.
Now, this one's a little bit more interesting because it's which one do you go with? But whichever one you don't go with is not going to be fun. And that's going to be the way we're going to be for maybe the whole season.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, one of the really crucial things is getting the right call on it. This week, it just looks like you got to go up against Bournemouth. Don't mess about.
Home to Bournemouth. I agree. So same with me. I think the people with Kane and Salah and Haaland will have a decision next week, because then Spurs have the best fixture. But we'll come to that next week.
Yep.
We'll come to that next week.
I want to get to Baker's team, and then you can talk about your team, Baker. But just for the podcast listeners, Pras and I, our starting 11 is the same. We have Ramsdale in goal, Trent, Robertson, Cancelo, James, Diaz. 5 at the back, and then in the midfield 3 of Salah, Martinelli, and Bailey, and then up top we've got Jesus and Haaland as captain. So that is our team for this week, and it sounds like Pras also is rolling his transfer for this game week.
As I have done for the last 5 years, Gameweek 2.
Okay.
So for me, I've made the move of Kane to Haaland, done.
Sunday night?
On. Sunday night. Yeah, done. So same forward line as everybody else, which is Jesus and Haaland. Then midfielders, I've currently got 5 in midfield, in that I've got Salah, Luis Diaz, Martinelli, Neto, and Andreas Pereira. And the back 3 of Cancelo, James, and Trent, Ramsdale in goal. Perisic is currently sitting as first on the bench. Might change with Pereira. See how I feel on it when it gets a bit closer, but probably can just roll with Pereira there.
You know what's the best compliment you can have when somebody looks at your team? There's a comment: does that team fit in 100 million? So people think your team is worth more than 100 million.
Well, that'll do.
Good compliment.
That'll do.
No, I think those are all good decisions. So you just have to sort of go with the gut on Perisic, even if he starts maybe a 55th minute sub or whatever. He clearly isn't ready, right? Or maybe he's more ready. We'll see what Conte says this time, and then you'll help us decipher it.
Yeah.
We have a fun question, and Joachim is a little bit asking for our help here. Heads or tails for Captain Salah or Haaland? If you have both, you're definitely captaining Haaland. But since he has a dilemma, what do you think?
As in pick heads or tails?
Yep, pick heads or tails.
Oh, we just telling them which one we'll go. We'll go heads.
Heads.
There you go.
Go for it. And usually get a better decision-making process.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, 900 viewers live. That was amazing. I want to thank Baker again for amazing insight, and it's just brilliant listening to you. Do check him out on Mondays with Adam on Above Average FPL. It seems like you guys are getting more traction this year, so it's really good to see, some of the best in the game. So continue to do good work, and we'll be tuning in. I know Pras is an avid listener as well, so
Oh, it's the best one. I mean, if sometimes there are weeks where I don't watch match of the day, but I still try to listen to these guys because they are your match of the day from an FPL perspective, and it's a great blend of eye test and what it means for FPL. So yeah, I absolutely love it. It's at Baker _434
FPL
butchered
343. I think it's FPL 323 in the things, but FPL 343 after the formation.
Right.
And yeah, Above Average FPL. You can find us on that. Sunday nights, 8:30 p.m. We'll go live and talk through the weekend. See what's happening.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Baker, for joining. And I also wanted to shout out Adam, who does co-host with you. He's amazing as well, and both
he does all the work. Right, when you see it, don't think that I'm producing all those visuals and all the nice stuff. I just turn up with a drink and talk through the weekend. He does all the work.
Just like me.
That's exactly what I said before the stream to you, Baker. I was like, how does Adam do all this stuff? He's just a whiz.
He's amazing.
When I was on you guys, he was just so good at it. So shout out Adam as well. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. I just wanted to tell the listeners and viewers that for the first 4 to 5 game weeks, we'll have a guest every week because it's all about the eye test. It's all about observation. So more the merrier. So we have some interesting guests lined up. Look out for that. But thank you for joining today.
Can we reveal one of them?
No, we'll let it be a weekly thing. Let it be a weekly thing. There's some good guests.
There's some good guests.
People will enjoy it.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you all the people in the comments. I do see a lot of good friends. I can't I'm not going to shout everyone out, but good to see you guys in there. Good to see familiar faces. We'll be back next game week 3 Wednesday at 12 p.m. UK time. And you can listen to this again, the podcast version as well as the YouTube. So good luck this game week. Have a good football viewing over the weekend, and we'll be back with burning questions. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.